A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. Bismillahir rahmanir rahim. As-salatu was-salam ala Muhammadin wa alihi at-tayyibin at-tahirin. Rabbi shrah li sadri wa yassir li amri wa hlul 'uqdatam min lisani yafqahu qawli. Rabbi zidni ilman. Assalamu alaikum everyone. Today inshallah we will be continuing with our topic of parenting in the light of Quran and Sunnah. And what we're doing is we're taking lessons from the Quran to guide us in the parenting challenges of modern times. And today is the second part of the series, and the topic for today is the Islamic parenting contract. So the question we started posing to ourselves last time was basically becoming cognizant of our role as parents and to recognize the responsibility that we have to our children. The theme for today, or the advice from today, comes from this hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, which says, "The child is the master for 7 years, and a slave for 7 years, and a vizier for 7 years. So if he grows into a good character within 21 years, well and good. Otherwise, leave him alone, because you have discharged your responsibility before Allah." So I like to think of this as basically the contract that Allah has given us, which is for 21 years. That is, what this hadith says is that from 0 to 7, the child is the master or the sayyid. And as we go on today, inshallah, we will talk about what that means. Then the hadith goes on to say that for the next 7 years, which is from the ages of 7 through 14, the child is a slave or an abd. And again, we will talk about what that means. And a vizier or an ambassador for 7 years. So the idea is that basically we have 21 years of parenting ahead of us. And the good news is that, after we have done our bit, then again, we have fulfilled our responsibility before Allah, and how the outcome of our parenting is up to the child after that point, of what he does with what we have taught them. And just as the child's need changes as they grow, similarly our role as parents changes as the child grows. So for example, obviously we will not parent an 18-year-old the same way we would a 7 or an 8-year-old. And the idea is to obviously be cognizant of that, and to rethink our roles, and to rethink how independent the children are as they grow, and to change the rules and have some flexibility around them as children become more independent. There's another hadith which says, "Let your child play up to 7 years and keep him with you for education and training for another 7 years. And if he succeeds, well and good." So again, the idea is that the first 7 years of the child, there is the focus should not be on discipline. The focus should be on other things which we will talk about. And the interesting thing is that modern psychologists have also talked about the 3 7-year periods, and the names are a little bit different, but as we will see, that modern research has tended to confirm what the Prophet told us 1400 years ago, and it is completely in line with good parenting practices of today. So that should give us a lot of confidence that as we started talking about last time, that although the modern theories do keep changing, the Islamic benchmark and the standard is stable, and it can give us some comfort that it is tried and true, and it can actually help us over the long haul. So let's start. The child is a sayyid. What does this exactly mean? So the need of the child, or basically we know that up to the age of 7, children are like sponges. They basically absorb everything around them, and they accept much of it, of what happens, as true. That is their reality, and especially when it comes from their parents. And this is a very famous saying that, "Give me the child and I will give you the man." In other words, what happens in that time, what happens in the first 7 years of the child, is extremely predictive of what the the child, how the child will turn up. So the needs of the child at that age are basically bonding with the mother and to have a responsive caregiver. And attachment is a big buzzword these days in psychology and in parenting. And the idea is that when the needs of the children are met at a very young age, in other words, when the child is young and they ask for something or they cry when they're hungry, and their needs are consistently met. In other words, putting it in the Islamic context, if they are the Sayyid, if the parents are following the lead of the child and what the child needs and working to meeting those needs, what happens is that the child develops an extremely secure base, a very secure psychological base, and they are able to explore their world. They have a good internal working model of relationships. In other words, that they form a bond of trust with the parent, which then goes on, helps them to develop other great relationships and stable relationships in the future. So again, a lot has been done in terms of research on attachment in recent years. And what it suggests is that it is extremely important to meet the needs of the child when they are very young, because it sets them on a path of psychological, emotional, intellectual success for the rest of their lives. So what is the role of parents when children are that young? Well, I think the first role, as we said last time, and what we will keep coming back to in this series, is that one of the most important roles of parents is to be a good role model. And obviously, we do that first and foremost by working on ourselves. In other words, being, working on our own self-growth, on our own development, and being conscious of our responsibility. And, if we have hurdles, if we have things that come up, to actually look at them from a somewhat detached perspective, a somewhat objective perspective, to see what needs to be done. So again, the idea is at this age, it is extremely important to be responsive to the needs of the child, follow the needs of the child. In other words, some people, sometimes we think that we may spoil the child if we respond to the needs, for example, of sleep or hunger. And the idea is, many experts will now agree that it is very difficult, if not impossible, to spoil a young child, right? A child which is under the age of 7. So again, to be a good role model, what does this mean? Because the child is a sponge at that point, and they are absorbing everything in their environment, the way we are as a role model is actually unconsciously internalized by the child. So our role again would be to create a secure and appropriate environment for the child, which both stimulates and nurtures them. So often parents think that because the child is a Sayyid, the parents don't have too much role to play, but actually we do have a very important role to play at that point. It's just that that role is not one which focuses on discipline or training at that age, at least in the very technical term of the sense of the word. But again, it focuses more on building that relationship of nurture and bonding and trust with the child. Also at this age, it is important to provide intentional and purposeful play activities. So things that would help them grow intellectually, emotionally, socially. And, again, just to point out that at this age, the more we can keep them away from screens and from digital media, things like that, it will be really beneficial in the long run. At this age, obviously, reading to the child and talking to the child even before the child has words themselves and begins to speak, again, is an extremely important thing that parents can do. So the second stage that Islam talks about is the age of 7 to 14 years. And the Arabic says that the child is an abd or I guess the English translation would be a slave. But basically, in essence, what this means is those are the ages which are prime time for discipline and training the child. And when I'm talking about discipline, I do not mean it in a sense of punishment or disciplining when things go wrong, but disciplining as an overarching paradigm of training the child in life skills and things like that. Because again, what modern psychology says that in this stage, children develop life skills, habits, and routines. They are also developing abstract thinking and logical thinking skills. So this would be the age when they start questioning things of fairness, for example. They're also developing moral reasoning. And it is, as we know, a period of great physical, emotional, and cognitive growth as well. The needs of the child at this age, of course, the need for love continues throughout all the ages. And there is a great there's a great need for the development of self-efficacy. Self-efficacy simply means to have a growing confidence in your ability to do things. The more you are able to look after your own needs, one would say that the more self-efficacy you have. So how do they develop this self-efficacy is obviously through them being trained in life skills and discipline. So the more they're able to do things from themselves, whether it be prepare a meal, look after their own hygiene, obviously, begin to travel a little bit on their own, whether it's public transport or whatever the appropriate environment is, the more they grow in confidence and the ability to make good decisions. The role of parents at this age, again, is extremely important. First of all, we need to make ground rules in the house, which the children would follow, and providing consequences for not following those rules. So again, the idea of discipline is not punishment after the fact, but it is actually more of a proactive measure, in the sense that if you have family meetings, for example, and you discuss rules in the, what are the, some of the rules in the house, and together as a group decide what would be appropriate consequences for not following through, that would be an example of discipline. At this age, it is, again, as I said, children are developing their moral reasoning, so it is a good idea for parents to get clear on what their moral framework is and how they are going to pass that on to their children. So at this age, again, it's very important to start having important conversations with your children about moral issues and about values. It's also a good time to start thinking about, how you're going to have sometimes difficult conversations, maybe about either substances or sexuality, things like that. And the idea is that, the biggest takeaway, I guess, in talking to the children would be that it doesn't really matter if you are uncomfortable, because many parents are. What matters is that you start the conversation at home. And it is very important. What research shows is that children who have conversations about difficult moral choices at home are much more likely to make good decisions when they're outside the home. It is children who've never really tried their moral reasoning, or who are not clear about it, or who do not have any input from parents, that end up not being prepared when faced with difficult moral choices. So this is just a framework of what discipline means, that it should be informed and aware. So informed means simply that we take a little bit of time to inform ourselves about what are the challenges of children, of youth today. So we're aware of what's going on so that we can have those appropriate conversations. Discipline and training, again, has an aim, and it is strategic in the sense that if I, for example, want my child to be able to cook for themselves, training and discipline would mean that I actually have a plan of how I'm going to teach him to do that so that he is able to manage. Again, training and discipline means that it is a movement towards excellence. Training takes time. It does not happen overnight, and it is step by step. So children learn by doing, by making mistakes, and the guidance and the training comes in showing them how, and then gradually letting them let them show you how to do things, and then eventually they would be able to do it for themselves. So lastly, obviously, training is a continuous process. It does not, it just because we've shown our children something 3 or 4 times or taught them how to do it, does not mean that they would immediately get it. They may take longer than what we think is appropriate, and that's absolutely okay. The stage 3 is from 14 to 21 years, and what the hadith says is that at this age the child is a wazir. In other words, he is an ambassador to you. And what modern research says again is that it is the socialization period. In other words, there is a greater peer influence on the children. Suddenly their peers seem to matter more than parents. And other influences at these ages can include the media, their friends, school environment, the culture, all of these things. But one thing to note that parents sometimes minimize how important they still are. But what research shows is that even though children appear to be very keen to please their friends, their parents are actually still on the top of whom they want to please. Sometimes that is not so clear to the parents because in the teenage years it may get lost sometimes in conflict. But we need to remember that what we do at home does make a huge impact on how the children turn out even at this age. So the needs of the children at this age are increasing independence and an opportunity to apply things that we have taught them and to perhaps make mistakes. This can be a very difficult time for parents to accept that children want to try different things, or they might, for example, this often comes up in careers. If we have a certain idea of careers that our children should do or would be good for them, they might actually choose something different, and they will only gain the confidence if we allow them, within reason obviously, to explore and to choose something. And it actually may not work out, or it may, but in any case, that's to remember that that's part of growing up. And we need to, as parents, manage our own anxiety about what our expectations are for them. So the role of parents at this age is to be a consultant, to provide a sounding board and obviously guidance, which is ongoing. We need to really establish a balance between over-involvement and under-involvement. So this can be quite a challenge because some parents find it hard to let go, and they may still be involved in the day-to-day, for example, academic life of the child, which the child is more than capable of managing themselves. On the other hand, under-involvement would be having no idea what your children are up to, or who their friends are, or what their goals for life, what their mental or psychological landscape is looking like. So it is a difficult age for parents as well, because again, we need to continuously ask ourselves if we are striking the right balance. We do need to continue to share our values and our wisdom. So although recognizing that children sometimes may choose a different path, as parents, it is our responsibility to speak our values. We do need to keep doing that throughout the ages, because we need to remember that children are actually getting value-based messages from all around, from their peers, from school, from the wider community. And if we keep silent, then ours will be the only voice which is missing in the picture. And the most important, perhaps, thing to note in this age is to keep nurturing your relationship with your children. So at the end of the day, as children grow, as they become more independent, it is only our relationship with them which is our biggest leverage. In other words, that is our biggest influence on them. If we continue to have a good relationship with them, it is more likely that they will still come to us for advice, for guidance, and that they will want to follow our values as well. And again, if at this age, sometimes conflict about a different choice in career or dress code or anything like that can take over, and sometimes parents get lost in the conflict. But if we keep reminding ourselves that what we can do, we can invest our time most in at that point is to continue to nurture the relationship, and then inshallah at some point things will become better. So what modern psychology says is that after the age of 21 years, core values do not change unless a significant emotional event occurs or there is effective coaching or therapy. In other words, once we've done the work in the 21 years, as Islam suggests, we have laid a really good foundation for the children. And if things are not so good during those years, then it does take some level of self-growth that the child has to do for themselves. It's not the end of the world, because obviously people do make choices, and they do end up leading fulfilled lives, but that will take much more proactive on their part, and they would need to be intentional about that. And this again explains why after 21 years Allah considers that as parents we have discharged our duty. So that was today's presentation, and if you have any questions or comments, I would love to hear from you, and inshallah we will see you again in part 3. Thank you, and Khuda Hafiz.